I just shaved it all off.
Yeah, you look like a bit of a thug.
Mm.
You look like you're from Salford.
Were you impressed with that Polish look and brought it back? 10 days in quarantine will do that to a man. Are you allowed out now?
No, tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Oh, mate. So, who did your hair?
Just got my mum to do it.
Right.
Did you pay her?
Yeah.
No.
No, it does. It suits you, mate. You look the part.
No, because I can't. Thing is, right, you know when you go to the barbers, you've got to have shit
No,
passer
no, I
with the
don't.
people that do it. It's not...
Vague memory from like 20 odd years ago. And I'm only joking. I take my son sometimes.
It's shit patter though, isn't it? It is.
What are the barbers?
It's just people that don't understand football trying to make conversation with you about it and awkward things like that, and just I don't really like the experience.
Do you mean it's like Twitter?
A bit, but it's because you don't see them enough for them to sort of be friends with you. But they know you like enough to know that you like certain things, but they don't know you well enough to actually have a meaningful conversation about it. It's a bit like the dentist when they sort of have a brief recollection of who you are. So they'll just say something like, I heard something about football on the radio earlier, and you asked them what it is, and they say, I forgot. So that type of thing.
Oh, football, innit, eh? See the soccer, eh? The old Reds beating the Blues, eh? God, what we like.
It's that Partridge thing. It was at Brent where it's like, watched the game last night. Which one? Don't know.
Partridge.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. I do, I take my son to the bars, and I don't know if I told you, I might have told you, Scotty. I was there once, and I sat there, and a guy walks in, and my son was getting his hair done, and he was round the other end of the barbers, and I was just sat in the waiting room. The guy walks in, and he looked at me, and he looked at the empty chair, and he went, "You next, mate." I was like, yeah, I'm just going to get a short back inside, bro, won't be long.
Did you get a little bit of excitement though, Jay, that you might still have it in you?
Yeah, I was like, oh, well. Now you mention it.
There's still life in the old dog yet.
Yeah. I wasn't gonna bother, but you're right. I'll get it sorted. I'll get it trimmed.
Does yours go grey, Jay? On the sides where it grows?
Not really. Not that I've noticed. I mean, I very rarely have anything to measure enough to see whether it's
really?
Good or not. But when I do, say I have a lazy day at home, like a proper lazy day, where I don't leave the house, I might not shave it for like 24 hours. But no, there's not. There was the odd bit of grey when I grew my beard, but not much, mate. Nothing. Yeah. I dream of grey hair. That's a pipe.
You ever thought of doing a hair transplant like Rooney did?
Yeah, I'm not really into that, to be honest with you, mate. I mean, I'm not against surgery. I had a nose job, didn't I? But I'm not that arsed about having hair. I had a skinhead when I had hair anyway for a long time, for a while.
You've got a good shaped head for it, though, haven't you? I think it's awkward when you. I think Rooney's not got the best shaped head for a bald bloke.
Our mate had it, didn't he, Mr. Robinson? And it's like, yeah, you need the right shape of head and you need the right hair as well. And I just think it'd be pointless to me because I'd probably just still shave my head. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just have a little bit more stubble on the top of me.
How does it work then? Like, when they artificially inseminate? That's not the right word.
It's a different operation altogether. Don't get that mixed up, mate. You'll be fucking fuming.
Fucking heck, man.
I've got another kid. Jesus, wept. Didn't ask for this.
Like, imagine if you went and got it done, and they give you like white person's hair, and it was just, you know what I mean? Like, they didn't get like the sort of the ethnic hair right.
Imagine if you had my hair instead.
Yeah. That'd be interesting.
White person's head. You're like a big blonde locks.
Yeah, like Tim Burgess and Andy Warhol sort of look. That'd be quality. Yeah. I'm here for that.
Yeah, I had blonde hair once. Did you know when I had blonde hair?
I didn't know. Why did you have blonde hair?
I went to Creamfields, and me and my mate thought, you know what would be a great idea if we dyed our hair blonde, and like, you know, it wasn't a great idea. There was a lot of drugs involved, Scotty. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah.
And then what happened was I just started a new job as well, like telesales. And I went to Creamfields, and I got back from Creamfields, and then my mate ran me and went, "Do you want to come Turkey tomorrow?" And like, you know, back in the day, what we were like. So I was like, just started a new job. If I come here, come Turkey, I'll get sacked. And he's like, "So do you want picking up or what?" To the airport. And I was like, "Nah, it's alright, I'll get a lift." So there's a few photos, and like I've got a few photos of me in Turkey with blonde hair, but yeah, even then my hair was thinning, so it looked shit anyway. If I'd have had full hair, but it looked double shit. You just got a slightly balding mixed race bloke with blonde hair.
I did it when I seen Eminem at Leeds Festival, and I tried to dye my hair blonde,
Right.
but I'd never bleached my hair before or bleached a sink or kitchen floor, and I got my mate to do it. The morning, I think, the night before we were due to go to Leeds. And it was fucking ginger, and like I was the only ginger Eminem in like a crowd of all these fucking fake Slim Shadys. You could tell he wasn't a real one. Let's put it that way.
That's like the missus once we got to a wedding. A mate of mine was getting married, Sam, and she dyed her hair purple the day of the wedding, and she had to she was dyeing it. It went wrong, and then she had to re-dye it and everything, so she missed like I had to go there on my own, and she had to meet me there later on for the evening do because she fucking died. And I had to get there and say like, "Oh, she's not here yet. She'll be in a bit. She's just re-dyed her hair because she's dyed it purple." Yeah, you've got all that to look forward to, James.
Were you not inspired by the Romania squad of, was it France '98?
Yeah, did you see that picture? I forgot about that. Was that when they played us or after they played us?
Don't know. I know it was.
The Beatles in '98, didn't they? But I can't remember that game very well. But I didn't know if they dyed their hair after that game or if they dyed it for it. But,
Hadji, I think, was in that team.
It was.
It's a great team, that wasn't it? Petrescu.
Yeah. They had a few, didn't they?
A decent Romanian team. Right, let's talk about shit again. Scotty, Motty, Youngy. We'll come up with a new name for the show at some point. Somebody who's good with words can do something like that, I guess.
There was someone amongst us who was good with words for a living. James
is a journalist in the making. He can fucking do it.
You're a fucking poet, mate. Come on.
There you go. Fucking apprenticeship. Yeah, move to Salford, get some work experience.
I barely got the words out of my mouth before he passed that one over to you. Hey, James.
Okay, it's been a quiet week, hasn't it? Again, as usual. Where should we start? The booze?
Let's get into it, mate. Get into that. Because I was quite surprised because, not about the booze, but I did a video today on the channel, the news, and we were talking about the booze. And I just sort of said, these people that think it's protesting against Marxism are just fucking lying, basically. Because it's not. And I think they need to brush up on the Karl Marx. And then not a lot, but a few people in the comments were like, "Oh, Jay, you know what? No, it's not like that. It's some people that are against this Marxist agenda and all this." And I'm like, "Really? Do you actually believe this nonsense?" Because let's have it right. No one's really booing because of Marxism, and I'll put it out there, and you can get involved in the comments. But do you really think that when you see Marcus Rashford and Jesse Lingard and whoever, or all the England team, it wasn't just the black players, but kneeling, that you think they're pushing Marxism? And if you do think they're pushing Marxism or a Marxist ideology, what is this Marxist ideology that they're pushing? I'd love to hear you explain it to me, because I like to think of myself as an educated man, but I'm struggling to see the connection between Marcus Rashford saying, treat me equally, treat us all equally, and pushing a Marxist agenda. Really. Yeah. I think that's a bit of a stretch, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I'd quite like Marcus Rashford to come out first game of the Euros in a fucking beret with Che Guevara t-shirt on and a fucking holding a Lenin's manifesto. I'd be fucking... That'd be absolutely awesome. They are just absolute idiots, and they're hiding behind the excuse of the BLM political organisation, and because whatever they've got as part of their manifesto, as an excuse to hide behind the reason they say that they don't want to boost, and to say it's a Marxist agenda I put a tweet out earlier on saying the same people who are saying they're against Marxism want fans to own their football clubs. I'm like, well, you don't really know much. You don't really know much about fucking Marxism, do you? You fucking dicks.
No, but it's like people that say like Brexit's like a working class movement and that sort of thing. When the people that run it, like Farage and Aaron Banks, are like these wealthy like tax dodgers that actually have no interest in working class people. It's like Tommy Robinson changing his name from Stephen Yaxley Lennon to try and sound more sort of common. It's the same thing. The people that are spreading this shit anyway, the main people that are radicalizing people, the Mail, a lot of the other people, they're often quite rich and wealthy and are doing it partly to protect their interests as well. It's the same with like a lot of the anti-vaxxer shit. Like they're all saying it's like, oh, it's people coming together and all this other stuff. But then Murdoch's was like one of the first people to have the jab, and like all the other wealthy people. If it wasn't a conspiracy theory, then why have all like the people that you're supposedly saying controlling it? Why have they had the jab?
Another thing about the conspiracy theorists is that they never question the people that they're getting the information from. They're very quick to question the majority of the people, but they never go like, you know what? Maybe he's full of shit, this guy who's telling me that, you know, that all this is an absolute farce. Nigel Farage is hilarious, saying again with the whole politics shouldn't be involved in football. And yet I didn't hear him say fuck all about Boris Johnson getting involved with the European Super League stuff. Because obviously it was important then that it was, but he didn't, because he didn't impact on the agenda of Nigel Farage, like you said, and the Aaron Banks. They didn't have anything to do with it.
Or Poppies as well. That's the separate argument. That
he literally did a tweet at the time of recording 10 hours ago saying these exact words, and I'm reading it verbatim. He's quote tweeted Oliver Dowden. Well done to Sports Minister Oliver Dowden. At last, some Tory courage against the cancel culture mob. So this is Oliver Dowden tweeting about the cricketer, I think, in it, Ollie Robinson. I'm not well to speed with cricket, but I've seen the story. Oliver Dowden had tweeted, Ollie Robinson's tweets were offensive and wrong. They are also a decade old and written by a teenager. The teenager is now a man and has rightly apologised. The ECB has gone over the top by suspending him and should think again. So he's tweeting, you know, well done for the politicians getting involved in sport. And then literally 6 hours later, he's put, England fans can boo if they want. We should keep politics out of football this summer. I mean, how does that make sense? Do you know what I mean? I know you can say, well, one's cricket, one's football, but it's all the same thing and it's sport. So you're saying, well done for the Tories for wading into this debate on sport and getting involved. And then on the other hand, we should keep politics out of football. Why don't you just say you just don't like black people?
And this is the problem. This is what I don't like racism full stop. Just be fucking honest about it. Do you know what I mean? I have much more sort of respect for an honest racist than a fucking than trying to hide behind this sort of fucking charade that he puts out. And the fact is that he's even more sort of ridiculous is the people that buy into his bullshit and don't see how he sort of bats from side to side with his opinions, because it sort of suits his agenda. He's a fucking, and that fucking fat spanner who was in front of his TV booing like he was fucking George Dawes from fucking The Fast Show.
I mean,
it's like his fucking head out.
That was, even by social media standards, that was one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. A man
the fact that he took his glasses off as well halfway through.
What was he doing? Like getting into character? What was that as a mark of respect? What was going on? It was like, you know, like taking your off at a funeral. It was like, right, I need to get into gear. And like booing his telly. I mean, is he the type of guy that thinks, you know, if he bangs his telly when he's hoovering, the players are going to fall over? What's he doing? Like, they can't hear you, you fucking idiot. Like, what are you doing? This is why you don't see your kids anymore. Pack
Grown man.
Do you know what I mean? Like, Mummy, why don't we see Daddy anymore? That's why. Because he does shit like this.
Yeah.
That's why you're not allowed to see him.
You can watch him on Twitter where everyone ridicules you, Dad.
Or once a month on a supervised visit. Like, that's it. And it's like, come on, man. And what annoys me about this is, Gareth Southgate, I'm not Gareth Southgate's biggest fan as a football manager, but I thought as a statesman, I think he's very good. He gets that part of the England job right. And when he came out and he stuck up for it and he said, they've every right to do it. We don't, you know, I back them. I understand why they're doing it. I support them, sort of thing. I'm paraphrasing here. And, you know, the boos need to stop. So, you know, we need to get behind the players ahead of the tournament. I thought even fucking in my cynicism, I thought maybe that might cut through to some of these people, and it didn't, because people still booed. And I think you just literally hurting the team that you want to succeed. You're not helping them. That's not going to make players play any better. They're not going to go, well, I'll tell you what, I wasn't up for this game now, but now that I've just been booed just for asking people not to be racist towards me, I'm going to fucking score a hat-trick. It's so stupid. It's so sort of, self-defeating that I just don't get it at all. It's
I'm surprised by it, because I saw a few people saying, oh, it's just a small minority or whatever, but then that kind of defeats the whole point, because if you can hear people booing on the TV, it's obviously not a small minority, because otherwise it wouldn't be picked up. And I think that kind of sidelines the whole thing if you're saying, oh, it's just a small minority, because then it isn't tackling the actual issue. You're just sort of putting it to one side almost.
No, you're right, because, like a small man, it's not like 4 people were doing it. And the microphone just happened to be next to them. There's obviously, like you say there, Younger, enough people that it's picked up on. So, I mean, I don't know how many, but I'm guessing there must have been like at least in the hundreds. Which is just really infuriating. And you think these people have like paid money, gone out of the way to go to this football match. They obviously give a toss about England, and to some degree, because they're there. Other than mate who was sat in his bedroom doing it, or his front room doing it at the telly, and yet they go in there and they think that their way to support this team and get behind it is to boo. I mean, there's always been this thing with some England fans that there has been that sort of mindset. They boo the opposition's national anthem, things like that. No surrender to the Taliban and all that nonsense. That the sort of stuff that we used to hear now and again at England games. Stand up if you hate Man U as well. You hate United, and just shout like that. And you always think there is a little bit of a mindset. And I went to an England game once. I've been to an England game twice, I think, but once in South Africa, because I was over there. And some of the sort of chants were a bit cringe. Like it was the England versus Germany game, the infamous 4-1 where the ball went over the line. And, I mean, I get some of it, even though would never join in England till I die and all that. But all the sort of the jingoistic sort of anti-German stuff, because it was the Germans, and you're like, really? Do you know what I mean? Like, this is just
but people like him are why I can't support England, because I'm English, but I just feel really ashamed at times. Do you know what I mean? When a lot of England supporters tend to be, I don't want to generalise, but you sort of West Ham, Millwall, Chelsea, those type of fans, and like it's just a bit like when I see the St George's flag, I don't see England. They're just associated with like dickheads like that.
And you do see a lot of those. By the way, you make a good point about clubs. I mean, listen. This isn't all England fans, obviously. There's millions of England fans that were disgusted at the booing. So we're not generalising all of them. But whenever I've been to I've only been to a couple, or you see it on the telly at England matches, you do tend to see those flags with like, smaller clubs on them by and large.
Swindon Town.
Swindon or Rotherham or what, you know what I mean? Like, no disrespect to fans for those clubs. But it does tend, because as well, you get a lot of those fans that we're spoiled as United fans. If we want to watch European football, we'll go in the Champions League or the Europa League. We're in it every year, practically. Some of these clubs fans, this is the only chance they get to watch, foreign football or international football or go abroad, is supporting England, because some of their clubs don't go into Europe. So I get that sort of thing, but it's just embarrassing. And you think in 2018 we had this, for the first time in my lifetime, we had a team that you could get behind, if that makes sense. They were very likeable. They were, young. They were just sort of, there was something about them. I've always had a bit of a problem with England anyway, with the attitude of some of the fans, and also some of the players. Like, I can't stand. I've never liked players like John Terry and Steven Gerrard, and not just because they played for opposition, but just the way they are. But this was a team that I didn't really hate anyone in it. Do you know what I mean? I don't mind Jordan Henderson. I don't really like him, but I don't dislike the guy. Do you know what I mean? He's just a bit beige. Other players from other teams, not my club. It was quite a likeable sort of team, and you got behind it, and they did all right. They got to the semi-finals, and then you think, okay, next competition we can sort of get behind this team again, and there's some other good young players coming through, the likes of Jadon Sancho and Phil Foden and players like that, and then we just spoil it with this shite, and it's just like, what we're doing. It's like we don't want to be successful. I'm not saying that if we all got behind the team, they'd win the tournament, but they'd have a better fucking chance.
Are the reason you supporting England for this summer? Because I'm not.
No. Do you know what we made? I know this is such a fucking stupid argument, but it's true. I really love Marcus Rashford. I want him to do well. And if he's playing in that team, I will be getting behind him. I know it's just
no, you're not.
True. If he weren't there, I'd be a lot less. And I know people be laughing at this and like for the wrong reasons. But if he wasn't there, I'd be a lot less arsed. But I am asked because he is there, and you know, and the other United players as well. Maguire's there, and there's 4 in total: Shaw, Maguire, and Henderson. I'd be surprised if Maguire even kicks a ball. To be honest with you, I don't even know why he's going. But you know, I do love Marcus, and I want him to have a successful tournament.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I'd like to see Marcus do something, but I'll be supporting Italy and think Italy will win it, considering the record they've got going into the competition.
Have you got heritage there?
Yeah. That's that. I'll be backing it. Yeah. So I'll be backing them. But every time we've been away, we've been to the World Cup, Jay, and when we sort of seen so many different nationalities and of fans, it was always the England fans that and I've been to the Euros as well in the past. And again, you don't want to stereotype all England fans, but I was in France for 2016, was it? Was that the Euros 2016? I was in France for England versus Wales there. And again, it was the same. I know Russian fans were being an absolute twats during all that, but it was England fans as well. And that's where the name sort of, you know, the stereotype comes from, that them sort of actions. And it's not fair and it's not right. But when you were making the question before about, or you're making the point about Southgate saying that you were hoping it would cut through when he's trying to say this, you know, not the lads are doing it for this reason, blah, blah, blah. Does it suit Julia, whatever, Braxley Hartley Brewer from Talk Radio or Nigel Farage if they don't say anything about it? Because all you see from them saying something negative, I can't remember when I'd last seen Nigel Farage until he popped up talking about this boo movement. Do you know what I mean? So there's no way that what they do is they see this sort of, they know there's a torch paper of people of a general public, and they know how to light that fire pretty much, and that's how they get to their sort of positions. So while Southgate doing it, all very good, you know, until you start calling people out one-on-one, Farage, you need to be doing all that sort, you know, sorting your head out and, you know, getting behind the team. It's not going to happen.
No, you're right, and there is definitely a sort of the right wing who pander to their audience. You know, who's that Geordie Muppet who...
Darren Grimes.
Yeah, that fucking no-mark. He's pipes up about it, saying they've every right to boo, it's a Marxist ideology or some shite. You know what I mean? Why is he getting involved? Why is he saying that? Because that's his audience. Do you know what I mean? Why is Julia Hartley Brewer getting involved? Because she obviously doesn't give a shit about football, and I doubt very much she's even deep down that bothered that people are kneeling. I think it's just pandering to the crowd.
Yeah,
it's the same.
It's like, do you remember the free school meals thing that Rashford did during the summer, and the people that, and the thing that when they were originally taking the knee at the Premier League matches and everything else, and all of a sudden it was like on Jeremy Vine, and he had all these people coming up. They'd never ever given anything about football, that were basically like tabloid journalists at the Sun and the Express, like calling them out for it. When it's like, you don't watch football. Why
you don't give a shit. Social outrage, fuck off. It does me. It absolutely does me. It
is. It's just, you know, they know their audience. They know what that, you know, Talk Radio. I think you mentioned Julia Hartley Brewer. I think that's the one where I think he's gone now because he's gone to GB News. Dan Wootton was on there.
No, I think he's still there.
Is he still there? Because he's I can't stand that man. These are the types that, you know, will be slagging off Meghan Markle constantly. That just because that's what their audience, you know, likes to do, and they'll be criticising anything that seems slightly left wing or woke, as they say. Now, if you're anti-racist, you're woke. Do you know what I mean? If you think it's you know, racism's a bad thing, all of a sudden you're woke, and it's the woke brigade, and it's so hypocritical because they bang on all the time about cancel culture and how cancel culture is right, and people are trying to cancel them and all this cancel culture. And when anyone does anything they don't want or they don't like, they try and get them cancelled. So it's just a fucking load of bollocks. They've not got a bone of integrity in the body. And it saddens me that so many people sort of listen to it and take it in. And, you know, as a football fan, everyone knows there's racism in football. I know there's racism in society, but I'm talking about football. We know there is. If you've watched football for anything more than, you know, a week, you'll have seen some examples of it, whether you've seen players being racially abused by other players, by fans, something going down between fans. We saw, was it Millwall, I think, who got fined when the whole section of the crowd were doing stuff. We know what happened with the likes of Luis Suarez, the likes of John Terry, all that sort of other stuff. We know what's gone on and what continues to go on. There was the thing with was it the Rangers lad last season?
Kamara,
sorry, yeah, I forgot his name, thank you. So we know what goes on, and we know it you know, it is prevalent in football, and the footballers feel it and hear it and know about it and want to do something about it. So to sort of act like, you know, they've got no right to do this and this is something else, it's just nonsensical. It really is, and it just winds me up because, like you were saying, Scotty, it's people that don't even give a shit about football half the time. Do you know what I mean?
No, not at all. It's just it's clickbait, isn't it? I suppose.
It's a great way of putting it. It's just clickbait. Do you know what I mean? Talk Sport do it with transfers or with.
But Talk Sport, right? They piss me off even more because they talk about taking the knee and they support anti-racist messages and support Rashford's anti-food poverty thing. But it's like you're part of the problem because you share a building with the Sun. Two, like your sister station is Talk Radio. Like you talk about, like you donate money to food banks and everything, great. But if you want to actually solve the problem, then how about you stop actually getting the Sun to print shit all the time? Because that's what leads to poverty. Because that's what leads to people voting for a conservative government that kind of cut stuff like austerity.
Because for that to happen, James, you'd hope that the people who own the Sun or Talk Sport or Talk Radio, who we know they are, that they had some sort of moral grounding, but they don't, and they'll bend to wherever the stories are in the aim of getting advertising spaces sold. Because at the end of the day, that's what they're asked about. They're not bothered about it, sort of stoking the fire against sort of like between races or classes or whatever. The end game is to make sure they've got listeners on the air so they can try and sell them fucking white van insurance, and that's exactly what it is. And
it's like the whole Super League bollocks. I knew they secretly loved that because they knew, and they were the first people to break that as well. They loved it because everyone was listening to them.
Yeah, no, you're right. It was a cash cow for him. Sorry, no, go on, Scotty, go on.
No, go on. I was going to move on to the next point.
I was going to say was just, if you look at when that happened, not right at the end of the season, but at a sort of time of the season where, you know, okay, it's always busy that time of the season, but not that busy. And then all of a sudden, it's everywhere. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone's clicking on it. Everyone's watching it. Everyone's, you know what I mean? It's just 24/7. People have got that thirst to discuss it, to hear about it. It's big money, man. It's big business. Do you know what I mean? And you know, I'm not going to be a complete hypocrite. I mean, obviously, I was against Super League, but we saw it on the channel. Do you know what I mean? We went live on the channel to talk about it, and I was amazed. I'll be honest with you, I was amazed at the numbers. Like when it broke.
Yeah.
We did, like, for us, one of our biggest ever views that night when we went live. We did like a 4-hour live show when it started going tits up because when Spurs and Chelsea dropped out, I think, and then United did, and Woodward got sacked and all that sort of stuff. But just from our point of view, you know, it went through the roof. So for these people who obviously have a lot more money and a lot more skin in the game than I do, then it must have been, you know, they must have been loving it, especially when a lot of them, you know, like for me as a football fan, I was against it just because for the reasons we've discussed previously on this channel. But for them, they don't give a shit.
No, not at all. And the thing is, the big difference between your page, your channel as a media outlet and TalkSport, you have an obvious bias that you don't veer away from. You know when you're going to Stretford Paddock, what you're, you know, it's a United heavy, you know, that's what you're going to be talking about. All the presenters on there are doing it for the end game of you want the best at United. The thing with TalkSport, they don't have that energy. They just sway like the sea, just depending wherever the current what's current is, and that they'll bend to it. Try and find something in there that's controversial, and then just fucking run 100 miles of it. And then speaking about controversy and not being able to fucking, even if there isn't a story there, and they're looking at clickbait, a newspaper that has got an obvious bias was the Daily Mail, who this week had the revelation, the groundbreaking story to me when I was coming home from Media City on Saturday night. I'm away thinking, shit, I better not go to Didsbury because he's not allowed to go into Didsbury if you're a white person anymore. I was like, what? I was like, the most affluent area in Manchester that I've ever been there. And I don't even think, I know there's a mosque there, but it's like, 95% white. Cold Feet, which is probably the most whitest program you could have that come out of Manchester, was filmed there. And now it's a no-go area for white people, apparently, according to the Daily Mail.
I take the kids to Didsbury sometimes for a treat. Just to see how the other half live. You know what I mean? Fucking hell, man. I've heard some shit in my time. But Didsbury is a no-go area for white people. What's next? Hale Barnes? Alderley Edge? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Don't go to fucking Knutsford. You'll get lynched. What are you talking about? What are you even on about? None of this makes any sense whatsoever. And what made me laugh about that Daily Mail thing, I think you and me both picked up on it, Scotty, was the fact that 3 weeks ago they'd ran an article on the best places for first-time buyers to live in Britain, and one of them was Didsbury. So you're saying in May, go if you've got money and you want to go and live somewhere, the best place to live in Greater Manchester is Didsbury, and then 3 weeks later you're saying if you've got money, the worst place to live in Didsbury, in Greater Manchester is Didsbury. It doesn't even remotely make any fucking sense, and it's just stoking this Islamophobic nonsense. Yep. Do you know what I mean? And I'm sick of it, and I'm sick of it. People picks up on the Didsbury thing, and rightly so, but it annoys me when you see towns like Bradford all the time, and put this narrative that, you know, if you're white, you can't go in Bradford, you get beat up by a load of Muslims. It's just not true, and we all know it isn't. And it's just perpetrated by the media constantly. The right-wing media, Daily Mail, have been running this shit constantly. And going back to the clickbait thing of why did they run it? Why? Because people will click on it and people believe it. And people need to start, you know, it's not a conspiracy theory to question what you know isn't true. We're not talking about the vaccine here or, you know, whether Bill Gates is looking at you on your phone or whatever. You're talking about something that you can literally, if you, me or you, Scotty, I know it'd be a bit for you, James, you could get in your car now and drive to fucking Didsbury and see for your own eyes the houses there, the demographics there, the affluence there, and then, you know, you could go to the mosque and see the I Love Manchester posters around it and some of the sort of stuff they do in the community and think there's not even an inkling of truth to this. There's not even they got the story slightly wrong. They just made it up. Yeah. And there's probably someone sat in Kent going, fucking hell, Manchester's gone at the dogs. Remind me never to go to Didsbury. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, mate, if you've got money and you want to go and live somewhere, go to fucking Didsbury. It's a great place to live. Do you know
what I mean? You've been to Knoxford Services before.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Exactly. So it's like, what are you talking? And do you know what? It fucking annoys me because I always think to myself, what must young Muslim men and women think living in this country at times when they just see this shit in the paper?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What is it saying to them? It's almost saying, you know, you're not welcome here. We don't want you here. You're not part of this country when, you know, I could be Muslim, you could be Muslim, James, you could be Muslim, Scotty. You know, it's a religion that anyone can choose to be. And yet it's just hammered constantly by the right-wing media. And it's made like, you know, if you're Muslim, you're not welcome here. And it's bollocks because you are, you know, I remember having this argument with someone on I did Canadian TV after the terrorist attack, the arena attack, and the presenter was like, oh, there must be this anti-Muslim feeling now in Manchester, you know, everyone must hate the Muslims, and I was like, there isn't any anti-Muslim feeling in Manchester. This was a person who was a fucking terrorist who did this, and there isn't a hatred of all the people who have a religion that this person didn't really have anyway, were just sort of using it as an excuse to try and make a fucking name for themselves and do something heinous. So there isn't that, and yet you have all this shit constantly in the Sun, constantly in the Daily Mail, constantly in the Express, and it's just lies. You know, you see it all the time, and even if you don't buy a newspaper, you can walk past a newsagent in this country and see it on the front page. You don't even need to buy it. And what sort of a message does that say to young Muslims in this country? And then we scratch our heads, and I'm not condoning it or saying it's justified, but we scratch our heads when people get sort of
alienated
and turn, you know, and get sort of enticed by fractional groups and turn to terrorism. I'm not justifying that at all. I'm just saying we wonder why did they get alienated and why do they suddenly not want to be part of this community? Because you try and make them feel not part of this community. Do you know what I mean? And you do your best. And Alex Ferguson said it. He said it in his press conference that went viral. You know, your job as a journalist is to tell the truth. And if you can't do that, you need to find another fucking job. And that goes to the Daily Mail because they're not journalists at all. They're just fucking comic book writers pretending to be journalists with a far-right agenda.
Mm. Yeah, that's a big one.
What I was going to say was, sorry, the sad thing was, right, because I used to do a paper round, and over a period of about 4 years, I saw more and more people stop buying the Times and the Guardian and
identifying themselves as a Muslim terrorist or an Islamic terrorist, I should say, who'd committed that. It would have been front page every day for the rest. Yeah. And it's just, you know, you are radicalising certain people. The thing is, I will never say that that's justified for the actions they carry out, what people put in a paper or what people say to them, or, you know, never excuse you to go out and kill people. But, you know, you can't sort of sit there scratching your heads and go, how did this happen? How did these people start thinking like that when you constantly feed just anger-inducing, aggravating bullshit? Sooner or later, people are going to snap. And that's a sad thing, and it costs lives, man. It does, and you can't say there's no correlation between the sort of the rhetoric and the narrative we see from these papers and some of the actions of certain individuals, because somewhere along the line it's going to have led to that. Somewhere along the line it's going to have cut through and it's going to have got into the Reds. So it's just the hypocrisy and just the almost the way to get away with it as well. Do you know what I mean? It's like they're just shameless. And it really saddens me, when you say things like that to me, James, about newspapers and about the fact that, listen, I can find fault with The Guardian, I can certainly find fault with The Telegraph, I can find fault with The Times, but I get where you're coming from when you talk about there's decent journalists there, there's proper journalism going on there, and sometimes, you will see a right-wing slant. The Telegraph for years was the Tory graph, but, when you look
I'd never buy it because I doesn't.
When you look at the expenses scandal as a good example of what they got right. All right, they sort of stitched Labour up in terms of the timings of it, but they went after the Tories on it as well, and there was some real decent journalism there. There are good journalists in those newspapers who are doing the job to the best of their ability. But when you look at the shite that you're seeing from some of the other newspapers and the fact that they're becoming more and more popular, it saddens me. And I was hoping that when it was the 2017 election, and the Mail and the Sun in particular just went after Corbyn like nothing you've ever seen, and yet and I thought Labour were going to get wiped out, and the Tories didn't get a majority, and you thought, wow, it's not really cut through the way it normally does, and I thought maybe there's a change here, maybe people aren't reading those papers as much, or they're not having the effect that they used to have. And then we've just seen since then it's just fucking gone back to form, hasn't it? And the Sun and
well, even the MEN's gone to shit now.
Oh, don't get me fucking started. Yeah, it's and it's the sort of the paradox there for me is I still know some of the journalists at the MEN and I respect them and I like them and I know they're hardworking. But I know, and I'm not making excuses for all of them, but some of them they're under the fucking cosh, and it's like churn out this shit or
it's like 12 articles a day. Some of them.
And I've spoke to them, and I'm not going to name names, but I've spoke to them. They've said to me, Jay, it's a fucking nightmare. I used to be able to go and spend a day on a story, backing it up, getting it sourced, speaking to, going into a police station and speaking to the coppers, going around the neighbourhood, knocking on doors, speaking to the individuals involved, speaking to the neighbours, speaking to, the local councillor. I do all that shit for one story. Now I've got an hour. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, and we need a clickbait grabbing headline. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like even little things like when it was the Italian footballer that died, and the MEN headline was Matty O'Darmian will be waking up to bad news. Like to clickbait it to make you think it was a transfer. It's like fucking hell, man. Like it's sad because the Guardian. Obviously that was it was run by the Scott Trust, I think it was in Manchester.
Yeah.
No, it's trying to be self-funded and buy donations and stuff. But that was based in Manchester and was one of the best papers around. The MEN was always a local paper that you could be proud of. Some of the journalists there. I still rate some of the journalists there. I think Neil Keeling is a good journalist, and I know some of the others as well. Personally, I think they do a good job. But it's not half the paper it used to be, and it set up a lot of the local little papers as well. Like you had all the town, you Scotty yourself, you had the papers in your town. I found out the other day in Eccles, we used to have a broadsheet. I couldn't believe it when I found out. We used to have a fucking broadsheet in Eccles. But, all these little papers get eaten up by the MEN and this, is it Mirror Group, the MEN, I think?
Reach now, yeah. It was Trinity Mirror, but it's been turned into Reach, yeah.
So it gets eaten up by a big conglomerate, big corporation, and then just churns out clickbait, and it stops being that local newspaper that you could, rely on and trust, and there would be a go-to paper, and just becomes a fucking, a tweet.
Have you heard of the Mill?
Sorry?
Have you heard of the Mill?
Yeah, the Manchester one. Yeah, I've heard of that one, yeah. Do you think that people read the news, or if they ever read the news, in a way to be informed, or is it more that they want to be entertained? Because nowadays it seems when you're talking about more people reading the Daily Mail, James, from your side, it feels more like nowadays it's people want to have their views reinforced. They don't want to. They don't want to be challenged. They don't, well, I don't think people want to have to learn more about. I think they want to go like that. oh yeah, I'm right. That says everything I want. Okay, fine, let's crack on with that day. And I think that's because of how much time we spend on social media, and we can take our information in 15 seconds and validate that as an actual thought process. You know what I mean? And it's just, I don't. How do you get away from that?
They do that on most TV or radio programs now. I mean, phone-in radio, especially. I mean, apart from maybe James O'Brien and a couple of others, the whole genre has now been churned into, right, A, how do we scare people? B, okay, well, we're going to have someone on here that is extremely left-wing, doesn't represent anyone really on that side, versus someone that's extremely right-wing that also doesn't really represent anyone that's conservative, and we're just going to let them shout at each other for 5 minutes, and that's basically what we're going to do now.
Yeah.
It's a good point, Scotty, because I think that, like, sometimes with, with Twitter, for example, going into a general election, if I went off my Twitter, I think Labour were going to win by a fucking landslide.
Yeah.
Because of the people I follow, and Labour now is not what it used to be, but a few years ago, especially, like, I put my more left wing because I tend to gravitate towards them because I'm a bit more left wing myself. I'm quite left wing, so you can get that and say, oh well, everyone thinks like that. But that's just the people I'm following and the people that are reinforcing my views. And how often do I follow the right-wing people? How often do I follow the people that don't have my views, or that are pro-Brexit, or that are pro-Farage and pro-fucking, the Toby Young and Darren Grimes and the Lawrence Foxes amongst them? Some of them are even blocked. I don't even want to fucking hear a retweet from them because it's just shite. So maybe you make a good point there. Is that not similar to newspapers where people actually, they don't want to hear the other side of the argument?
No, and yeah,
point, I never thought of that, but maybe they just do. I hate foreigners or Muslims or whatever, and I want to just sort of get that sort of that view reinforced. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah,
but to be fair to the BBC, they do actually.
Is he there? Oh,
James.
He's got that angry. He's paused.
He's got that angry. The haircut's kicked in.
Look at him. He looks like a proper madder there, doesn't he?
He does, doesn't he? He's gone full fucking angry Salfordian there. He looks like he could have just got off the Metrolink at Wick.
Oh, right. Whilst James calms down. Right. So what I was going to say then is, like when you talk on Twitter, you make your surroundings as comfortable as possible, don't you? And I think that's what we do.
I'm making you solo just while James comes back.
All right. So. But I'm looking at myself. It's a bit awkward, that.
Sorry.
Why are you making me solo?
Just while James isn't paused on the...
I know, but now I feel like fucking Goldbridge.
All right, then we'll bring it back. We'll bring it back like that then. I think that's the first time we've ever used it. There you go. He's gone. When he comes back, he's got the link. He'll be back. Sorry, go on. Yeah. What were you saying?
No, so I'm saying, like, we make our surroundings as comfortable as possible because we don't want to see things that sort of negate against our natural feelings and stuff. And it's like when you talk about blocking people on Twitter. So are we not part of the problem as well?
Yes, hi James. You back in the room, mate? We lost you there for a minute. To a certain degree, I mean, there's something different for me about social media and news, slightly. I mean, I do tend to read other papers and other news agencies that, I don't agree with. Social media isn't always a sort of place where I'll go to get all the different views or to whatever. It'll be more sort of like interacting with people that I get on with. I do have people there that I've argued with that have a sort of different view from me, that I find up following because even though I don't agree with them, I respect their opinion. But by and large, I tend to sort of, it isn't as balanced as it perhaps could be. But then for me, social media is a little bit more escapism. So you might argue, well, that goes back to your original point. Is reading newspaper more entertainment and information? I just feel for me, especially the way I am, as we spoke about this before, I got into a stage where I was arguing about social media. I was getting angry about fucking, the opinions of fucking, I don't know, Firmino _1997 and fucking pulling over my car because we were arguing about whether fucking Salah and Mane and Firmino were better than Rooney and Tevez and Ronaldo or whatever. Or it just got silly. And you're like, there's more to life than this. But I don't think that there's anything wrong with having that in your social media, of having people that you get along with and chat to and, you know what I mean, like interact with because, you have a similar opinion or whatever. I just feel that if you're going to get your news and it's going to give you news that's going to make you hate someone, that maybe you should be a bit more balanced with it and you should think, hang on a minute.
It's quite an Adam Curtis view of that of society. He sees crime as actually sort of like a postmodern spectacle almost, and sort of sees it more as sort of fascination, and almost because of rolling news coverage and everything like that, it's been turned more into entertainment rather than actually reporting on what's being said, and it's been turned into a spectacle almost for people to watch in real time.
Yeah, fucking voyeuristic, isn't it? Especially in America when you watch them doing them car chases.
It's mad, isn't it? Because I remember, I don't know if Scotty, you might even be a bit too young for this, but the first Gulf War was like the first time I remember getting that experience at 24-hour news, because obviously there was this war with Saddam Hussein. It was like 1990 and 91 or whatever, and it was like such a a sort of a weird thing to see the news constantly on and giving us updates on his war, and yet but there was a war going on to feed it. And now you've got 24-hour news all the time. There isn't a war going on, but you've created so many conflicts going on that they can always feed this sort of thing. And yes, there are actual wars and conflicts going on, especially in the Middle East. But there's just all this sort of churning out of all this sort of stuff going on where you feel like you're at war all the time, don't you? And
yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean?
And now we've got GB News as well, which I'm sure will have a much very balanced opinion on everything.
But then because you've got these sort of, it's quite perverse, because then you've got these 24-hour news channels, and a lot of them spinning stories because of their political agenda, which then again creates people to have sort of be radicalized left, right, or whatever to do certain things that causes catastrophes that goes back on the news. And it's just self-perpetuating all the time. Do you know what I mean? It's such a dangerous model of how we live in now. And I don't see us getting off this sort of carousel until it fucks off into space.
That's why I think we need to protect the BBC, because for all its flaws, right, as a public service broadcaster, we need that middle ground, which is neutral and supposedly reporting on just a balanced thing. Because otherwise, if you get rid of that service, which there's issues with that, but then you would just end up like America, where it's just too polarized.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame because, you do need some form of balanced view, and it's funny, isn't it? Because a lot of people, when it goes on, the liberals and the left wing will complain it's too right wing. The right wing will complain it's too liberal, and you think there must be something there that maybe there is sort of, both views are on there. It's a bit more balanced. That's why people are saying it's not enough of this and it's not enough of that. Whereas, Fox News viewers would never say it's not right wing enough. Or if they do, then they'll go and watch Newsmax or OAN or whatever it's called. But yeah, it is a shame because it all sort of ties in. I saw this, I think we might have spoken about it on this podcast, but there was a great article that was doing the rounds a few weeks ago, and it was saying, like, you look at this country 10 years ago even, or maybe, 12 years ago, and some of these issues we've got now, we just didn't have. We were part of the EU and it wasn't seen as a problem by most people. I don't think most people walking around going, we need to get out of the fucking EU, this is a disaster. The BBC, most people were happy with, and now, we left the EU, we caused ourselves this drama, we've gone through all this austerity, with, food banks and all the rest of it, and it's just become a bit of a nightmare. Now it's like, we need to get rid of the BBC as well, when we had this organisation that everyone was happy with, and now we're trying to influence that, and it just feel like we need to take a step back a little bit, because I'm not saying that it was a utopia in sort of 2008, 2009, or whatever, or 2010. That's
the biggest financial crash of the 21st century.
Exactly. Well, there was that, but the reaction to that hasn't been a good one. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's been one of more division, more sort of making life harder for ourselves. Austerity for me wasn't a fucking. I don't want to keep going on about it. It wasn't an economic policy. It was a political one, and it didn't solve anything. Do you know what I mean? There's no way that austerity, on the back of the 2008 financial crash, helped us. It's not. It didn't. It's just cut.
So you're telling me you're closing a library in Wolverhampton because of some bankers that have basically got too greedy and have had to be bailed out? Why are the poor, the working classes, having to suffer for something that's got nothing to do with them?
Exactly. It's just bollocks, and it's like, and we're still, we're back to square one financially almost now. And well, that's all the pandemic fault. Come on, man, it's fucking garbage. It was just a case of being an opportunity for the richer to get richer, and you've seen all these fucking billionaires now coming out of everywhere. You've got more billionaires than you've ever had, and this sort of, we had this big announcement the other day about the corporation tax thing. We're going to start making them all pay 15% corporation tax. Which actually, when you look at it, isn't even that fucking much.
And George Osborne's disappeared, hasn't he? Since Cameron then and all this happened, people like him who were so influential in all of austerity, they're just nowhere to be seen now. They've sort of made all the damage.
It's just. You know what amazes me as well is the way that, in certain ways, we laud these people and we look at them as sort of almost like either figures of fun, like, oh, look at him, look at Bojo there, such a silly man, so funny. Or we look at them as sort of, decent people, and I think they're anything but. I remember years ago when it was like fucking GQ magazine did the Politician of the Year, and George Osborne won it. And you're like, what the fuck is that about? Do you know what I mean? What's the sort of requirements here for this magazine to give him the Politician of the Year? And it's like, I think recently, one of the most recent ones when it was David Lamia, and I can sort of understand it, but I just think, mate, I'd have told him to fuck off and threw it in the bin. Do you know what I mean? It's like, why are you giving out awards to George Osborne when he's helping to wreck the fucking country?
Didn't Jeremy Corbyn do GQ as well a few years ago? I remember him being in a sharp suit on the front cover of GQ.
Honestly, it's just,
Well, but what the fuck's a politician doing being in PQ, in GQ?
No, I don't know, mate.
It should be PMQs, that's where they should be. And this is the whole thing about politicians. Do your fucking job, and that's all you need to be doing. You don't need to be appearing on fucking Have I Got News For You or panel shows or fucking doing stuff like that. It should be an isolated job, in my mind. You should have any sort of external sort of what do you call it? Like what Rishi Sunak's missus got a load of conflicts of interest. Yeah, you should.
Mean if you're the health secretary, your sister shouldn't have shares in a company that you go and give a contract to, that sort of thing.
That now also might become the head of NHS, Dido Harding.
Is that what you're getting out there? That might be a little bit dodgy.
Yeah, I mean, it's a stretch to. We've all got a dream.
To be fair, my siblings own lots of shares that I don't know about, so you can't blame him.
Yeah.
And then you got people like Blair inviting pop stars around to his gaff when he's Prime Minister. He says, what? No.
Fuck off. I remember Noel Gallagher at the Brits telling us all to go out and vote for Tony Blair. Do you know what I mean? Like, all right, yeah. And then 10 years later, he's telling us all that Jeremy Corbyn's a communist, and then he's fucking telling us all what we should be doing while he sits in his fucking mansion in Belsize Park.
Yeah, it's just a fucking.
And then Blair's still getting airtime talking about vaccine passports and being given all this stuff when he failed as a Prime Minister, and in my opinion, anyway, shouldn't be given any sort of coverage or anything because of the whole mess that he made of Iraq.
Exactly. He made a fucking absolute shambles of Iraq with an illegal war. He led us on this path that we're on now with the fucking domestically. Do you know what I mean? He led to Brown, that led to Cameron, which led to where we're at. And yet he goes on telly and goes on these shows like he's some sort of oracle. And he's revered. I saw Alistair Campbell on something a few weeks ago where he was talking about all the elections, and he was going like, if you look at the last 15 elections or whatever, it was like Tory win, Tory win, Blair win, Blair win, Tory win. I'm like, but you don't understand that fucking the Blair win, the reason after that is you had the Tory wins is because of Blair.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? He helped to lead to that. So you're acting like, he's a fucking shining light in the middle of all this shite when he's not. It's just no self-awareness from any of these.
I mean, but
so disillusioning.
That shows what a shit state labouring, aren't they? That they're fucking wheeling Paul McCartney out to do Hey Jude. That's what he is, isn't it? Fucking Tony, bringing out the greatest hits. That's what it is. Fucking, here's Blair. Things didn't get quite as better as we'd hoped.
Yeah.
In fact, things got a bit shit for a while.
To tie it back to the beginning of this podcast, there's a man that definitely needs a fucking haircut, by the way. I don't know what he's come as, Tony Blair, but it's just ridiculous.
Yeah,
and even as a bald man, I will say that his hair is fucking tragic.
He looks like a fucking prune version of Unai Emery.
He looks like. Have you ever seen
Unai Emery's granddad?
Have you ever seen Indiana Jones and the what's the one? What's the third one in the one with Sean Connery?
Last Crusade.
Yeah, Last Crusade. Have you seen where the guy drinks the wrong cup?
Yeah.
And his hair goes all long, and he fucking starts wrinkling and everything. Then he turns into a skeleton and dies. He looks like that guy just before he turns into a skeleton. That's what he looks like.
I saw someone tweet that said that he looks like he could be a manager at like AFCON. With like a shirt with one button undone.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. And he's going around giving out advice like he's a fucking, some sort of expert.
There's sort of like journeyman managers that have managed like 13 different national teams and have had like one stint at like an English side in the 90s.
Yeah. Right. There's a few of them, isn't there?
Yeah. Well, we were going to talk about Euro 2021 or whatever it's going to be called, but we're an hour in, so I'll have to do another show for that. But until next week, that's been Motty. That's been James Youngy. I've been Scotty. Get in touch, tell your mates, subscribe. Argue with us, man. Tell us what your points of view. Tell us why J Motty's wrong. What?
Just argue. If I want an argument, I'll fucking message you.
James is, getting some work for James ahead of him starting university next year.
I'd tell you what, James can put even you in the fucking shade when it comes to arguing, son. Don't you worry.
Well, that's what I mean. I've noticed it. No, I've noticed him in the comments after every show. James trolls through. Thank you very much for your comments there. Well, actually, you're wrong about that. So yeah, thank you very much, our very own Anne Robinson.
No, not her. She's a horrible person, and I don't want to ever be associated with her ever again.
Yeah,
James, you're definitely not the weakest link. Hey,
on that bombshell.